All right, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Paul Kaufman. Here. Maria Davies.
Here.
Susan Edmondson. Here. Ruth Johnson.
Here.
Brian Westcoat.
Present.
Kim York.
Here.
Kim Bailey.
Here. Is there an approval of the agenda? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Motion passes. Informational item, tax levy hearing.
So this is the time of year each year where we have a special session just to approve our tax levy. Cindy Bias is going to present the general information about the tax levy, and then there'll be an opportunity for public comment about the tax levy before you take action to set it formally for the year. So I'll turn it over to Cindy.
Okay. Good evening. I'm pleased to be here tonight to present the district's tax rate for the 2017 tax year. The process of setting our district tax rate hasn't changed since the prior year. It begins with preparation of a standard calculation of the maximum allowable rate using the Missouri State Auditor's Tax Rate Calculation Program. And that program is designed to ensure that our calculated rates are in compliance with Missouri Constitution and Missouri statutes. The administration then proposes a tax rate that's within that maximum allowable rate and based on our district budget and other factors, and we submit that proposed rate to the State Auditor's Office for review. Meanwhile, you all established a date for the tax rate hearing, which is what we're here for tonight, and this gives the taxpayers, the public, an opportunity to provide input about the rate. We published a public notice about the tax rate hearing. There we go. Can you back it up one for me? Okay. One more. One up. There we go. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so this is the content of the notice that we published in the Cass County Democrat Missourian, and we also posted this in all of the district buildings and other prominent places throughout the district. We prepared the proposed tax rate using that state auditor's calculation and submitted it to the state auditor's office, and we received their confirmation that our numbers were correct. So the second column in the lower section shows you that the maximum allowable tax rate for this year is $4.9511 per $100 of assessed value. For the debt service levy, which is the third line in that lower section, you can see that the tax ceiling in the second column is nearly 4 cents above last year's actual rate, which is what's shown in the last column. But since our debt service fund is building adequate balances at the 2016 rate, we budgeted for that to remain the same. So our proposed fiscal year 18, which is tax year 17, tax rate is to remain the same as last year, the 1.3383 per $100 of assessed valuation. For the operating levy that provides the revenues to our general fund, the tax ceiling for this year is $3.5739 per $100 of assessed value, which is shown in column 3, line 1. Column 2, line 1. This is 12 cents below, 12 3/4 cents below last year's actual tax rate, which is really no surprise. We've been talking through the whole budgeting process this year that because the Consumer Price Index ceiling that's imposed by the Hancock Amendment, the calculation of the maximum allowable tax rate, there would not be a large increase in revenue, even though this is a reassessment year. And we predicted that there might actually be a reduction in the tax rate, which is what has happened. So in just a minute, I'll show you some slides that illustrate how this occurs. So tonight, we're proposing a tax rate of $4.9122 per $100 of assessed valuation. $3.50 $3.5739 to be levied for the operating funds and $1.3383 to be levied for the debt service fund. Thank you. Okay, so this slide shows the Ray-Pec School District's property tax rates over the last 15 years and the current year's proposed tax rate. As we discussed during our budgeting process, the tax rate has remained the same over the past 14 years, and as you just saw, we are required to have a reduction in that this year because of the Consumer Price Index ceiling. Okay, in tax year, this is kind of how the ceiling works. In tax year 2016, with our operating rate of $3.7014 operating rate, that gave us revenues of about $18.4 million. The 2016 increase in the Consumer Price Index was 2.1%, so that gives us a maximum allowable revenue this year from property that existed in 2016 of about $18.8 million. We'll later add the assessed valuation of new construction to that total permitted revenue, but the total revenue permitted from existing property that existed in 2016 is limited to $18.8 million. Okay, so after reassessment, the assessed valuation of that existing construction is $526,044,634. And if we applied that 2016 operating rate of 3.7014 to that number, we'd get revenue of over $19 million, which is above the maximum allowable revenue on existing construction. So what we have to do to calculate the maximum allowable revenue, or to the ceiling on the tax rate, is to divide that new assessed valuation by the permitted revenue, and that calculates to our 3.5739 per $100 of assessed valuation. So that's our ceiling, and that becomes our proposed tax rate. We can't really predict what impact this has on individual taxpayers because it all depends on their individual assessments. Some taxpayers will experience an increase in their total tax, and some may experience a decrease. We can then apply that new tax rate to both existing and new construction, and we come up with a little over $19.4 million for the total expected levy. When we apply the assumed collection rate to that number, we arrived at an estimated operating revenues of about $19.3 million. And as I mentioned before, the reduction in the tax rate wasn't really a surprise. During the budget process, we estimated the operating revenue from property taxes considering both the Hancock Amendment ceiling and the estimated assessed value of new construction throughout the district. And in the end, the proposed levy does provide our budgeted revenue of just a little over $19.3 million.
So just to kind of summarize some of that information, the graphics I appreciate because it was a kind of an attempt to explain a very complex calculation, and that basically is if your values go up more than inflation, you have to roll back your levy. And that's the reality of what we're facing here. So even though the voters had initially in the past approved a 375 operating levy, we're now at 357, slightly below that because property values have grown faster than inflation over time. So that's what drives the calculation.
So it has a ceiling.
It has a ceiling. That's correct.
And so this is basically, it's a rarity in government, and basically taxes are being rolled back.
The tax rate does go down at times. That's correct.
And that's because of the Hancock.
Yes. So with that, you would now, as a board, be willing to take any comments about the tax rate before you set the actual tax rate. So
Are there any comments from the public? Again, these are comments regarding the tax levy. Is there any board discussion?
I just have one comment. If we can go back to the slide that had the bar graph on it. What I want to say about this is that, for the past 15 years, we've been dealing with the set levy. And I just want to commend staff for everything that they've been able to accomplish over that time frame, considering, we've had a little bit of increase in revenues because inflation has gone up. But for the most part, we've been dealing with a pretty static amount of money. And for what we've been able to accomplish since that time frame is a huge credit to staff. And I just want to make sure that gets said.
I would agree. I think it's also important, and Cindy, I really appreciate you trying to lay this out in comprehensible ways. So my takeaway from this is that a tax levy was set 15 years ago, but there's a Hancock amendment that puts a ceiling on it, and if property values go above, if those rate quicker than inflation, then it rolls the tax levy back. And so we've hit that by virtue of recent evaluations. So now we're receiving even
A lower rate.
we're receiving a lower rate than the taxpayer even voted on.
Yeah.
So,
Without the recession, we would have hit this spot a lot sooner than we did.
yeah. Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion to set the tax levy?
I move to set the 2017 tax levy at $4.9122, $3.5739 for Fund 1 incidental, and $1.3383 for Fund 3 debt service.
Second.
Any discussion? So I guess I would like to add that we're not changing it at this point. We're keeping it the same that it was voted on 15 years ago.
Within the limits of the
Within the limits of the
calculation, yes.
Hancock amendment. Any other discussion on that? All those in, let's do a roll call vote.
Maria Davies,
Yes.
Susan Edmondson,
Yes.
Ruth Johnson,
Yes.
Ryan Westcoat,
Aye.
Kim York,
Yes.
Paul Kaufman,
Yes.
Kim Bailey.
Yes. Meeting is adjourned. And we will start the board meeting in 5 minutes. Let's take a